Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we take your sources, could be articles, research, notes, whatever you've got, and we really get into them. We pull out the most important insights.
Yeah, think of it as your shortcut. We do the digging so you get the key takeaways fast.
We want you to be truly well informed on the topics you care about.
We sift through it all, connect the dots, and help you see what really matters in the material.
And today, we're diving deep into some excerpts from a real heavyweight. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. This book.
Yeah.
It's influenced millions, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the source material itself tells us this wasn't just some random idea Hill had. It was actually inspired by Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate.
Wow, Carnegie himself. Okay.
Yeah. And it's built on over 20 years of research. Hill studied hundreds of successful people.
So what was the goal? What was he trying to figure out?
The big secret, really. How do people actually accumulate riches? And the source is careful to define riches pretty broadly.
Right. It's not just about cash in the bank.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. It's financial, yes, but also spiritual, mental, material well-being. It's the whole package.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this deep dive, we're going to explore some of those core ideas from the excerpts, right?
That's the plan. We'll look at the power of thought, where it all starts. Then the role of desire. Imagination, which he calls the workshop of the mind.
Workshop of the mind. I like that.
Yeah. Then knowledge, but a specific kind of knowledge, persistence, which is huge. And crucially, how you deal with obstacles, especially fear.
Fear. Yeah, that holds a lot of people back. Okay, let's unpack this. The source material itself, right at the beginning, it sets expectations for the reader, doesn't it? It's not like a beach read?
No, definitely not. The preface included in our excerpts calls it a textbook on individual achievement.
A textbook. So serious stuff.
Very. It explicitly says it wasn't written just for entertainment. You can't just, breeze through it and expect results.
That feels like a key point. It's meant to be studied, like really chewed on. There's a quote in there from Dr. Hutchison, Edison's associate.
Right. He said, read maybe one chapter a night, max. And really focus, underline stuff, go back to it.
So it's about internalization, not just reading the words.
Exactly. Making it part of how you think. The source actually claims there's a magic formula in there, a secret, pulled from all these successful people, tested over 25 years, cost maybe over $100,000 to research back then.
$100,000. That was serious money.
Yeah.
And Carnegie apparently felt this secret, this formula, should be available to everyone.
Yeah, that was the idea. Doesn't matter your background. If you're ready and you apply it, the source suggests it can help you achieve financial independence, success. That whole broad definition we talked about.
So it's presented as a kind of universal key, right, but you got to turn it yourself.
You got it. You have to do the work.
Okay, so if that's the framework, where does the journey actually begin? How do you start accumulating these riches? The source makes this really fundamental claim. Riches begin in thought.
That's the bedrock. Everything starts there. The source says, the amount of wealth you can get is basically limited only by the person who sets that thought in motion.
And the absolute foundation, the ignition switch, is desire.
Desire, capital D-E-S-R-R-E, and not just any desire. Hill is really emphatic here. Weak desires. They bring weak results. It's gotta be.
A burning desire to win. I saw that place.
Exactly, that burning desire. Think about that story of Edwin C. Barnes.
Oh yeah, the Edison guy.
Right. He didn't just vaguely want a job with Edison. He had this incredibly specific goal, become Edison's business associate.
And he went for it with tunnel vision. Showed up, didn't ask for a job, just declared he was there to go into business with Edison.
Total conviction, and he just stuck with it. Refused to leave, refused to take no for an answer until it became, as the source says, a dominating obsession. He basically burned all bridges behind him.
Wow. That's commitment.
It really is. Or think of Marshall Field after the Chicago fire.
Yeah.
His store burns down, everyone's leaving the city.
And he's like, nope, rebuilding right here.
Exactly. Standing in the ashes, driven by that burning desire, saying he'll build the world's greatest store on that very spot. That's the intensity Hill's talking about.
And this connects to that idea of money consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm. It's more than just wanting money. It's about saturating your mind with the desire until you can actually see yourself, feel yourself already having it.
But it's not just wishing.
No, definitely not luck or wishing. The source is clear. It takes dreaming, hoping, yes, but fundamentally it needs that powerful desire, and crucially, it has to be backed up by planning, definite plans.
Okay, so desire is the starting block. What fuels it? What gives it power? The source points to faith.
Faith is positioned as absolutely critical. It's what helps you remove those mental limits you put on yourself. There's a great line in there. Faith mixed with a thought gives it vitality, life, and action.
Vitality, life, and action.
Okay.
And this ties into how the subconscious works, according to Hill.
Directly. The source says the subconscious takes any thought impulse, good or bad, and translates it into its physical equivalent if it's mixed with emotion.
So the emotion is the key ingredient for the subconscious.
Seems to be. And what's really interesting is the practical bit. You can apparently develop faith voluntarily by repeatedly telling your subconscious you have it. Autosuggestion.
Like programming yourself.
Sort of, yeah. He draws a parallel. You know, if you hang around criminals, you might become one because your mind absorbs those influences. So you need to deliberately feed it positive emotions, like faith.
And actively avoid the negative ones.
Right. Because if fear or doubt dominate your thoughts, the subconscious will just as readily turn those into reality. It's like this internal law. Your focus lifts you up or drags you down.
The examples really make this concrete, like the story of his own son.
Yeah, born deaf-mute. Hill says he planted the desire to hear and speak, mixed it with his own faith, kept communicating it, and the son eventually did hear and speak because he came to believe it, too.
That's incredible. And the business associate who survived surgery against the odds.
Attributed, again, to his own desire to live. It frames the mind's will, fueled by desire and faith, as this incredibly potent force.
The source even interprets Christ's miracles through this lens, doesn't it? Suggesting it was the power of faith in action.
It does. It presents it as the core power behind Christianity's influence, faith acting on people's minds. It's a very specific interpretation, focusing on mental power and belief.
Okay, so we have desire, we have faith. What's next? The fifth step, according to the source, is imagination, the workshop of the mind.
Exactly. This is where the rubber meets the road, in a way. Imagination is the faculty you use to create the plans. It's how you turn that intangible desire into tangible results, like money.
And ideas are the key output here.
Absolutely. Ideas are the starting point of all fortunes, and they come from imagination.
He makes a distinction, though, right, between two types.
Yeah, synthetic imagination, which is basically rearranging existing ideas, concepts, plans into new combinations, like putting puzzle pieces together differently.
Okay, and the other?
Creative imagination. This is where, supposedly, you get genuinely new ideas. Insights, flashes of inspiration. The source says this works best when your mind is vibrating at a high frequency, often stimulated by strong desire, and crucially, it gets stronger the more you use it.
Use it or lose it kind of thing.
Pretty much. Think about that Coca-Cola story, the old kettle idea, bought for just $500.
$500. And it became, well, Coca-Cola.
Exactly. The source argues what was really bought was the idea, mixed with that secret sauce of imagination, desire, faith, that intangible combo.
And the Dr. Gonzalez story, needing $1 million for a college.
Another great example. The need became a consuming obsession. He used his imagination not just to wish for the money, but to devise a plan. Preach a sermon titled, What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million.
And it worked. Philip Armour heard it and gave him the money.
Yep. And the source stresses the money came from an idea rooted in a desire he'd held intensely for 2 years. It shows riches often come from these definite demands based on principles and plans, not just working hard without direction.
He even says master salesmen sell ideas, not just products.
Right. And look at industries like movies or radio back then. Millionaires were made by people who could recognize a powerful idea even if they didn't invent the tech itself. They had the imagination to see the potential.
Okay, so desire, faith, imagination.
Yeah.
Then comes knowledge. But he's quite specific about the kind of knowledge needed, isn't he?
He's very specific. He draws a sharp line between general knowledge, knowing a little about a lot, which he says isn't very useful for making money,
Okay.
and specialized knowledge focused on a particular field or purpose. But even that isn't enough on its own.
Right, it has to be organized.
Exactly. Organized and directed through definite plans toward a definite end. That's the key. Knowledge is only potential power, he says. It becomes actual power when you organize it and apply it purposefully.
And he wasn't too impressed with traditional education's ability to teach that part.
No, he felt schools taught what to know, but not how to organize and use that knowledge effectively once you have it.
He uses Ford and Edison as examples again, right? Limited schooling, but highly educated in acquiring and using the specific knowledge they needed.
Precisely. And his point is, specialized knowledge is actually easy to get. Universities, night schools, libraries, correspondence courses, now online courses, it's everywhere.
So the trick isn't just getting it, but knowing how to get what you need and how to use it.
Exactly. It pays to know how to purchase knowledge. Successful people, he argues, never stop learning. School is just the beginning.
There's that interesting story about the woman helping the unemployed salesman.
Yeah. She created a prepared plan to market personal services for him. Basically, a professional proposal outlining his bookkeeping skills and the benefits he offered. It wasn't just a resume, it was a sales document for his services.
And it worked?
It did, got him a good job. And then she used a similar method for her own son, fresh out of college.
Helping him skip the entry-level grind.
Exactly. He landed an executive role, negotiated his own salary, saved years of climbing the ladder. The source argues starting too low kills ambition, puts you in a rut. Starting higher helps you think bigger.
Like the Dan Halpin story, too. Started selling hearing aids, hated it, but aimed higher, got assistant sales manager.
Which put him in a position where opportunity could find him. And it did. A competitor noticed him, hired him, and boom, VP, general manager.
Hill even says associating with someone persistent like Halpin is worth more than money. He had his own son work for Halpin because of that influence.
It really underscores this idea of strategically acquiring and applying knowledge, even when it comes to marketing yourself. And he emphasizes the huge potential in figuring out new ways to market personal services, because that's where so much money changes hands.
Needs imagination again.
Always comes back to imagination and planning.
Okay, so we've got the desire, faith, imagination, the right knowledge, solid plans, but none of it works without persistence.
Persistence. This is non-negotiable, according to Hill. Absolutely essential. He says flat out there's no substitute. Failure just can't deal with persistence.
It seems simple, but he observes most people aren't good at it. Great starters, poor finishers.
Yeah, they hit the first bump, the first bit of opposition, and they fold. He calls persistence the carbon to steel. It's what gives character its strength and resilience.
So building a fortune isn't just about having the right ideas, but sticking with them through everything.
Through everything. Applying all the principles consistently with persistence. And if you feel like you lack persistence, his advice is basically build a bigger fire under your desires. Make the why stronger.
He makes a pretty stark claim, too. Without persistence, you're beaten before you start. Poverty consciousness takes over if you're not persistent in pursuing money consciousness.
It's like persistence is this hidden guide that tests you with discouragement. Only those who keep going after being knocked down actually make it. And here's a powerful idea. Every failure brings the seed of an equivalent advantage if you don't accept defeat as final.
You have to look for the lesson, the opportunity within the setback.
Exactly. I think of Fannie Hurst, the writer, 4 years of rejections, or Kate Smith, singing for free for ages before hitting it big. Persistence personified.
What helps build persistence, according to the source?
Several things. Definiteness of purpose, knowing exactly what you want. That burning desire again. Self-reliance, having definite plans. Accurate knowledge. Cooperation. The mastermind idea. Willpower. And critically, habit. Persistence becomes a habit you cultivate.
Habit that links nicely to the next step. Decision. Prompt. Definite decision-making.
Crucial. Because indecision, Hill calls it the seedling of fear. It starts small, grows into doubt, and then blossoms into full-blown fear. Very sneaky, very dangerous.
And he draws a line between leaders and followers here, too.
A sharp line. Leaders decide quickly, firmly. Followers, well, they tend to lack that definiteness, that decisiveness. They often just drift into situations.
He criticizes schools again for not teaching this habit of decision.
He does. He feels it's a fundamental skill that's overlooked.
The American Revolution example is pretty dramatic, isn't it?
Hugely dramatic. He highlights the decision by Hancock, Adams, and Lee to call the Continental Congress. He argues that decision, made under incredible danger, was maybe even more important than signing the Declaration later.
Because it set everything in motion, required immense courage and faith.
Absolutely. And think of Samuel Adams refusing Governor Gage's bribe. That's peak definite decision based on principle.
There's that really intense example, too, the man facing execution, finding peace through resignation.
Yeah, it's extreme, but it illustrates the power of decision, even if it's just accepting the inevitable. Decision gave this man resignation to his fate.
But the flip side is that decision gives you the power to refuse unwanted circumstances.
Exactly. And he states very clearly, worry comes from indecision. Make a decision, stick to it, and the worry often dissolves.
Okay, let's shift to power. Not just personal willpower, but external power. It's needed to put plans into action and, importantly, to keep wealth.
Right. And power, in this context, is defined specifically as organized and intelligently directed knowledge.
Organize again.
And directed.
Always. And how do you get this power? Through organized effort. That's the coordination of two or more people working together harmoniously towards a definite goal. This is the core of the mastermind principle.
The idea being you can't achieve massive success totally alone.
Pretty much. No single person has all the necessary experience, education, talent, or knowledge for a great fortune. You need cooperation. You need allies.
He even gets a bit mystic, the psychic phase of the mastermind.
Yeah, it ventures there.
Yeah.
Suggesting that when minds coordinate in harmony, their combined spiritual or mental energy creates something more potent, like batteries linked together. A group of brains in sync, he suggests, generates more thought energy.
And he uses Ford again. His alliances with Edison, Firestone.
Right. He points out Ford's biggest successes came after forming these close, friendly alliances. He sees it as direct evidence of the power generated by minds working together harmoniously. It's about synergy, basically. The whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
That's a good way to put it. Leveraging collective brain power and drive.
Yeah. There's a chapter in the source material that might surprise some people in a book about getting rich. Sex transmutation.
Yeah, that one often raises eyebrows. Hill identifies sex desire as arguably the most powerful human drive.
Okay, so what's transmutation?
It's about consciously redirecting that powerful energy. Instead of just physical expression, channeling it into other creative efforts like art, literature, invention, or, yes, building a fortune.
So taking that raw energy and using it differently.
Exactly. The source claims that when men, in particular, are driven by this desire but channel it, they often tap into heightened imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, all the stuff needed for achievement.
The energy keeps its power, but gets a new outlet.
That's the idea. He connects it to genius, suggesting geniuses are often people who can elevate their thought vibrations to a point where they access knowledge or ideas not normally available.
And the brain is key here,
Yeah.
like a radio.
Yeah, he uses the analogy of the brain as the broadcasting and receiving station for thoughts. Emotions extremely rapidly.
So transmuting it keeps the vibration high, making the creative imagination more receptive.
That's the theory presented. It supposedly tunes you into ideas from the ether and gives thoughts the emotional intensity the subconscious needs to act.
He calls the sixth sense this creative imagination, right? Something you can cultivate.
Yeah, suggesting it's rarely used deliberately but can be developed. It operates on a higher plane of thought.
He mentions Dr. Gase in his quiet room for concentration.
Right, waiting for ideas to flash in. And Edison trying thousands of things with synthetic imagination, but then needing that creative spark maybe fueled by this transmuted energy for the big breakthroughs.
He brings in historical figures too. Lincoln and Anne Rutledge, Napoleon and Josephine.
Yeah, suggesting deep emotional connections, particularly romantic ones, can fuel creative genius. He argues history shows many great leaders were inspired or driven by the influence of women, especially wives.
But there's a warning too, isn't there, about misuse?
Oh, absolutely. He's very clear. While transmutation can lead to genius, just indulging the drive without control can be destructive. He equates intemperance in sex with the damage from alcohol or narcotics potentially destroying reason and willpower.
He contrasts sex drive with love, though.
Yes, love is described as more spiritual, enduring, bringing out artistic qualities. But when love, romance, and sex are combined and presumably managed or transmuted, that's presented as a powerful combination for genius.
And he touches on the dynamic between men and women.
Yeah, suggesting a man's desire to please a woman gives her significant influence. He advises intelligent women to understand and work with a man's nature tactfully. His view is that the right woman's influence is essential for a man's...
And there's that bit about infinite intelligence and energy connecting brains.
Yeah, a more philosophical, almost spiritual idea. That the universe itself is this intelligent energy field you can tap into through these principles to help manifest your desires.
He even shares his personal technique, the imaginary council meetings.
Right. Holding mental meetings with people he admired, Emerson, Lincoln, Edison, Ford, Carnegie, to absorb their traits through autosuggestion. He said they felt like real personalities offering advice. It's a fascinating application of the principles to shape his own thinking.
So, powerful tools, but also significant roadblocks. The source spends a lot of time on the 6 ghosts of fear.
Yeah, these are presented as the major internal enemies, the 6 basic fears: poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. All other fears, he says, are variations of these.
And he saw them as almost cyclical, affecting society at different times.
He did. Fear of poverty dominant during the Depression, fear of death during wars, fear of ill health afterwards.
And he believed mass fear could create reality, like the fear of poverty contributing to the Depression.
That's his argument, yeah. That collective negative thought, focused on poverty, helped manifest the economic hardship, aligning with what he saw as natural laws.
He calls fear of poverty the most destructive. Why?
He traces it back to humanity's tendency to exploit each other economically, and he notes how being broke crushes your spirit, makes you vulnerable, which some employers might take advantage of. Money, or lack of it, has a huge psychological impact.
Fear of criticism. That sounds really common.
He says it's everywhere. People driving old cars they hate, staying in bad relationships, not pursuing education, letting relatives run their lives, all because they fear what others will think or say. He argues it kills initiative and imagination.
Fear of ill health. Is that just being afraid of getting sick?
It can be, but it also includes negative thinking, hypochondria, imagining illness because you focus on it, and even self-coddling, faking illness for sympathy or to shirk responsibility. This fear can also tie back to poverty, worrying about medical costs.
Fear of old age. Linked to poverty again. And losing independence.
Often, yes. Fear of becoming dependent, losing vitality, also sometimes linked to old religious teachings about the afterlife. He saw people slowing down prematurely around age 40 due to this fear, developing inferiority complexes.
And fear of death. He calls it the cruelest.
Yeah, often fueled by uncertainty, and he felt sometimes exploited by religious fanaticism, selling answers about where we come from and where we go. But he argues it's useless because death is inevitable.
He brings in that physics idea again, matter and energy transforming.
Right, implying continuity beyond death, making the fear less logical, his main remedy. A burning desire for achievement, serving others. Stay busy, stay engaged with life, and you won't have time to worry about dying.
Okay, so these fears are powerful. What's the master antidote?
One word, decision. Prompt, firm decision.
How does that work for each fear?
Decide not to care what others think beats fear of criticism. Decide to accept old age as a time of wisdom beats fear of old age. Decide to ignore symptoms unless confirmed helps with fear of ill health. Decide you can survive without a specific person's love tackles fear of loss of love. Decide to accept death's inevitability counters fear of death. Decide to manage your finances without worry, whatever your situation fights fear of poverty.
So it's about making a conscious choice to not let the fear control you.
Exactly. Reaching a general decision that nothing life throws at you is worth the price of constant worry. That decision, he claims, brings poise, peace, calmness. Worry paralyzes intelligent action.
And you need to be honest about your own tendencies towards fear.
Yes. Recognize your own laziness, indifference, susceptibility. Then build counter habits. And consciously shield yourself, keep your mind closed to negative, depressing influences from other people.
Guard your mental space.
Actively defend it.
This ties into self-awareness, which brings us to the idea of annual self-analysis.
Yeah, he presents this as really vital, especially if you're selling your personal services, which most people are in some way. It's like a business taking inventory. You need to know your strengths and weaknesses.
And track progress.
Absolutely. The goal is to see fewer faults and more virtues each year. Tangible improvement.
He provides questions for this.
Yeah, a list of 28 questions in the source material. Things like, are you delivering high-quality service? Enough quantity? Are you cooperative? Do you concentrate? Are you open-minded? Any bad habits like intemperance? Are your decisions based on facts or biases? Do you budget time and money? Are you honest about correcting weaknesses? Do you seek sympathy? Does your pay match your actual value? It's a pretty thorough self-check.
Yearly performance review. For yourself.
That's a good way to think about it. Confronting reality to improve.
Okay, finally, the source situates all this within a specific context for Heekwild's context and what he calls the law of economics.
Right. He starts by praising the opportunities and freedoms in America, housing, food, transport, property rights, banking security, and he attributes all this directly to organized capital.
Organized capital meaning?
The whole system, machinery, factors, railroads, ships, trained workers, financial structures. He argues this organized system is essential for civilization, making even simple things like breakfast possible by bringing resources together.
And he defends the role of capitalists in this system.
Strongly. He argues that these individuals, often criticized as predatory interests by politicians of his time, are the ones providing the essential capital and infrastructure that creates opportunity for everyone else to accumulate wealth within that system.
He argues against trying to get without giving.
Very forcefully. Without providing equivalent value or service in return.
His view is that sustainable wealth comes only from providing useful service.
Yes. Legally holding on to riches requires rendering useful service equivalent to the value received. He states that no system allows for legal wealth accumulation purely through force of numbers or demands without that exchange of value. He acknowledges groups can push for better wage hours, but only up to a point before the underlying law of economics kicks in.
He uses the Depression as an example of defying that law.
He does, yeah. He saw it as a consequence of economic imbalances and attempts to get without giving, leading to a necessary, though painful, correction.
But ultimately, he sees America as a place where honest effort can lead to riches.
Absolutely. Unparalleled freedom and opportunity for anyone willing to provide useful service. He even points to things like the booming cosmetics industry during hard times as proof that opportunity always exists somewhere.
He issues a warning, though, about not adapting to economic realities.
A stark one. Refusing to adapt to the law of economics, in his view, could lead to societal breakdown, referencing dictators and firing squads elsewhere as extreme outcomes that America, thankfully, had avoided. It's important to remember this is his interpretation, reflecting his era in economic philosophy.
Okay, so pulling it all together. Desire, faith, imagination, specialized knowledge, plans, persistence, the mastermind understanding the brain, conquering fear, self-analysis, operating within economic law. How do they all connect?
They're presented as an interconnected system, really, not separate tricks. The desire is the engine. Faith gives it the emotional fuel for the subconscious. Imagination and knowledge create the blueprint, the plans. Persistence is the relentless driving force that keeps executing the plan despite obstacles. The mastermind provides leverage and amplified power. Understanding your brain helps you direct the process consciously. Conquering fear removes the internal sabotage.
And it all has to function within the reality of providing value in the economic system?
According to Hill, yes. It's about transforming your internal world, your thoughts, beliefs, habits, so that your external actions align to produce tangible results through service and exchange.
Wow. That really is a comprehensive philosophy, a true deep dive into these foundational ideas from Think and Grow Rich.
It really does drive home his central message. Building riches, however you define them, money, well-being, contribution, it doesn't start out there with luck or circumstances. It starts in here.
Inside your head, with a state of mind.
Exactly. A definite desire, unshakable faith, creative imagination, all channeled through clear plans and powered by relentless persistence.
And it demands that deep self-knowledge, the courage to face down your fears, and recognizing the power of collaboration and continuous learning.
It's really a call to take the reins, conscious control over your thoughts and actions.
Okay, based on everything we've dug into from these source materials, here's something for you, our listener, to really mull over. The source makes this powerful, almost challenging claim that your mind inevitably becomes like the influences you allow to dominate it, and that poverty consciousness is the default setting it'll take over any mind that isn't deliberately and persistently cultivated for money consciousness, or perhaps success consciousness. So the question is, what dominant influences are you consciously choosing to allow into your mind right now? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope these insights give you some valuable new perspectives to consider and maybe even apply.